Anthony Bartleson, welcome to the American Glutton Podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
AKA, people will know your voice, but let's just get it out there. Meat Dad.
That's it, baby. We're talking Meat Dad over here. We're not Anthony when we're over here. We're Meat Dad.
Meat Dad. Meat Dad is important. Dude, I love your content so much. I've been on every diet there's ever been in life. And I think briefly when I was a little kid, my mom made me go macrobiotic, which I don't think it was meat free, but it certainly was reduced meat.
Yeah,
Um, but like in real life, I eat quite a bit of meat. I can't get away from it. Like none of the diets. I feel terrible when I don't consume a lot of meat. Okay, so the point is like
yeah.
watching your stuff brings me so much joy because like let's be honest, meat can be not very cheap, so to find a cut that's comparable to a ribeye in a roast that's quarter the price is amazing.
That's it, man. That's how it all that's how all of it started for me with, I've been a butcher for 20 years, and throughout this thing, it's like I got all these customers and I'm selling them these things and I'm upcharging and I'm making as much money as I can because that's how you're taught, man. That's how it's a business. And so going through this thing and I'm just kind of it's not me anymore. That's not me. So, however, it kind of went, I kind of started taking another angle and I'm like, you know what? No, why am I doing this? People are like, oh, should I get that? And I'm like, no, man, this isn't my, you should get this. It's going to cost you this much and then this. And they're like, no way, I didn't know that. Like, go get a porterhouse. They're about to get a New York strip and a filet mignon. So the New York strips, $25 a pound and then the filet mignon's $30 a pound. Well, you got the porterhouse, that's $20 a pound.
Right.
So you can get both of those things. And they're like, well, the bone. I'm like, the bone's gonna be great. You're gonna gnaw on it. Your wife or your husband can gnaw on it. Give it to the dog. I mean, for all it's worth, you're still saving money when you do it that way. And just those little things, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm gonna start this reverse engineering thing on people, and then let's start teaching people the right way. And it started catching on.
It seems to be such a barrier to entry for people who want to eat healthier, right? And like that's such a bizarre metric because I think it becomes very subjective. However, whole foods, in my estimation, are healthier than processed foods simply because we're going to be com- compelled to eat less of them. You get fuller, you eat whole foods, you get fuller, it's hard to like snack on ribeyes all day long and go through a lot of them or chicken breasts or something like that. Whereas Doritos were created so that,
Yep.
there was that Lay's challenge. I bet you can't eat just one. Like because they've been modified in a laboratory so that you cannot eat just one. You can't do it. Um, and there's a lot of concerns from people who are like, well, it costs a lot of money to eat that way. And it does. Like largely we in America are used to getting our food very, very inexpensively. And then you go and you're like, well, I'm just going to eat meat and vegetables. And it's like, well, that's a lot more expensive.
And
Um,
I'll stop you there because that's where everybody is so wrong. And it's so wrong because, and I'm sure you know just as much as I do, but so for the last 30 days, I kind of took a tally of, I didn't write it down, but I'm like, how much am I spending? So the last 30 days, I did the carnivore diet, right? And so my kids, I still gave them some kids stuff, obviously I made it a little bit better. And I'm like, wait, I'm gonna start giving them more of this. But throughout that time, man, the money that I actually saved because you're not eating out, number one. And so if you eat out once, twice a week, man, that's already a ton of money for a family of four. And when you're doing a carnivore diet, you're not doing that. And the way that I'm doing it, you get a big chunk of meat. I spent $50. That $50 is going to last me the whole week. And then some eggs, and then maybe a little milk. I'll have a cup of coffee. And then, I mean, I'm not for myself personally. I mean, man, I've been saving even more money. This is crazy and eating better. And I lost like 35 pounds, man. And I'm like, dude, wait a minute. This is wild. So again, it's like I don't think it's just the meat. I obviously think it's a lot more to do with the processed foods because
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if you eat a vegetable or something, like I might get a rash because it doesn't work good with me, and I'll figure all that out. But I think it's mostly the processed food, and I've noticed meat has helped me with my energy, has helped me with like my brain fog, and it's not me trying to like sell meat. It's me just saying, dude, I'm gonna try this. Everyone talks about this. I'm gonna try this myself. What's the real deal? And I was like, damn it, this actually feels great.
Yeah, it did. It has become such a thing. I personally have never done carnivore. I actually have another buddy in LA right now who's doing carnivore, and he has nothing but positive stuff to say. Like my concern listening to guys like Joe Rogan talk about it is like, do you have to be like 3 feet from a toilet at all times? And my buddy's like, no, that's not the issue. That's not an issue
No,
he's experiencing. And so, like, I think whatever makes you feel better and whatever handles what the ailments you're looking to handle, that's a useful thing to do. But I totally agree with you. I do think it's like I don't like to say foods are good and bad because I don't like to moralize foods. But
no.
for me personally, consuming processed foods became a big problem, and it was a problem for the majority of my life, where whatever regulators or governors are in this system of a body that I have, they just get shut off when I start eating processed foods, and I can overeat like an insane amount. And when I'm hesitant to say like anybody who just switches from a processed food diet to a whole food diet is going to get to their be all end all goal, because I do think it will ultimately take more than that. As our goals become refined and refined and refined, you might have to go into a point where you're like, if I want my ab muscles to be visible, I'm going to have to be hungry,
Yep.
and this is like not what is sold in keto. Keto is like you just stop eating carbohydrates and you'll get to wherever you need to get. And I didn't find that to be true. I lost plenty of weight doing keto, but then
Mm-hmm.
I got to the point where I wasn't losing weight anymore. Um, but yeah, man, the processed foods are awful, and then you do have people who are like, meat's expensive, and I think you're offering a wonderful service to people, even down to your knives, man. Like, you think like, in order to butcher beef, well, I got to go out and get wussed off knives. And you're like, no, here's my Victronox knives that I've had forever. It's got a plastic handle. I love it. Here's how you sharpen it. It's amazing.
And and that's what I'm trying to do. So, I mean, obviously through social media, you're going to get a lot of people shoving their products at you. So in the beginning, I got a lot of people, hey, sell my knife, sell my knife. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. A lot of them are really expensive. A lot of them are really cheap. And for me, my integrity is huge. And so everybody that I'm speaking with to me is a blue collar person, right? And so if I were to talk to myself, that's how I always do any of this. If I'm going to talk to myself, am I going to tell myself, go buy this $120 boning knife? I'm going to say, no, man. If you want that $120 boning knife, get it in a few years when you're established and you have a little money to spend around. You don't need to start with that. What you need to start with, something quality, something that's going to last, something like so. That's why I recommend Victorinox and all that. But throughout all this thing, I started talking to a company that is here in the USA in New York, and I'm like, man, I want to do, I want to make my own knife, but I want to make it as expensive or less expensive than the Victorinox, but I want it to be the same quality. So we went and we made one, man. We got this, it's a boning knife. It's a slash fillet knife. So it's kind of that. I wanted that 2-in-1. So you're kind of getting a deal. It's the semi flex. So anyway, so it makes it nice because again, I'm not trying to make a bunch of money on people. What I'm trying to do is like, here, this is what you can use. You don't have to buy this. You can do this. So again, saving money, man, just saving money and just trying to be honest with people. And there's no reason to just sell shit.
Yeah. No, those tricks, I can't wait to get your knives, by the way. I didn't know I did not know you had a knife or were
Yeah, I just have
creating it.
one. Yeah.
That's amazing. I can't wait to get it. I can't wait to use it. But all of the things, everything you show, from like taking a whole chicken apart, like, I buy a lot of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. I
Yep.
know I always look and see it's a lot more money than buying a whole chicken. You can practically get a whole chicken for like two boneless, skinless breasts. Like it doesn't totally make sense how they do it, but somebody else is doing the work because it is slightly complicated. Like I couldn't, it's not something I would figure out just by feel, but you're showing us how to do it, which is a very big service. And grinding meat, like all of that stuff is really helpful.
Yeah, it's all little tricks that we basically, most of us we didn't grow up learning this, right? And so, for instance, like, you talk about ground beef. Let's just say, a package of ground beef at the store is, let's say it's $5 a pound, right? And then you see a roast, and the roasts are on sale this week for 3.99, right? So already you're looking, you're like, oh, that's less expensive, but I wanted ground beef. Well, now trim up that roast, make it the most beautiful little center cut roast you ever had. All the stuff you just got rid of, grind it up, and then you have burger for $1 less a pound. I mean, and this works for so many things around here. I always talk, because I'm in California, tri-tip. They always put these untrimmed tri-tips on sale for like $3.99 a pound. You can't beat it. You can do anything. You can throw it on the grill, you can cut it up, you can do stew, you can do ground beef, and I mean literally anything you want. And so if I'm at the store and I see tri-tips on sale, I will not look anywhere else, because I'm like, there's no reason to go look at the ribeyes, because I can just make this a beautiful tri-tip steak, leave the fat on there. And so again, and so I try to teach people, even when I'm in the store, man, I'll see people looking, and I'm like, oh man, hey, you see these over here? I'm like, oh, stop, man. You're just shopping, but I
Uh,
just want to help.
It is against your brand, but I have to ask, will you ever go to a very like a Harvey Gus or a McCall's and spend an insane amount of money on like a tomahawk ribeye or A5 Wagyu or something like that? Do you do that, or do you live by what your code is?
No, I mean, I've first of all, I've never even heard of either of those. So I guess those must be some pretty nice spots. But no, like I've been to steakhouses and stuff, and like yeah, it's always fun to go out and get a steak. I definitely will do it. There's no reason not to. But I don't find the I don't find the urge to, like, I don't crave a steak from a restaurant because I'm like, oh, I haven't had a good steak in a while. I like the ambiance. I like to, let's get some cream spinach. That's fun.
Yeah.
But going for the steak, no, I'm going to a Mexican place for Mexican food because, oh man, that's what I need.
Yeah.
But yeah, but other than that, no, I love going to the steakhouses, but I'm not like I need to get a tomahawk because I mean I've had it all. I've had it all every single way. Being able to bring this stuff home, and the older stuff, the stuff that I mean, hanger steaks and stuff nobody's heard of. I've got to have fun cooking this stuff and ruining it and then perfecting it. So that's what's also fun about all this.
Yeah. Yeah. I spend a lot of time in Southern Florida, and there are a bunch of really nice steakhouses. I've been to all of them where like you almost have to take out a mortgage to get the big
Uh
steak
huh.
there. They're just insanely overpriced, but I'm with you. I like cream spinach. I eat very little of it. I'll get it. I'll have a
Uh huh.
tablespoon of it, and then that's that. I like
Exactly.
Brussels sprouts with bacon. And again, like I I have to stop myself from picking the bacon out and eating just that. Eat some of the greens.
Yeah. Huh.
But then there's this restaurant called Louis Bossi, which is an Italian restaurant, and it's like an American Italian restaurant. Um and then they also serve a steak that they dry age in-house. And I'm telling you, man, that steak, and my wife and kids who know I'm super into steak, they're like, wait, you only ever want to go to the Italian place to eat a steak? And I'm like, what can I tell you? That's the steak I like.
That's the one, man.
That's the one. And I
Sometimes
think
they
that,
know what to do, man. I mean,
yeah,
is it a bone-in T-bone by chance?
it's a bone in. They do a bone in ribeye, which I've never gotten. They do a bone in New York strip, which that's actually an awkward bone because it is just half of a T-bone.
Yeah.
So it kind of curves around. So you gotta, and by the way, they cut it for you and they always leave way too much meat on the bone, which I appreciate because it gives me something to do. I always eat I'm always done with my food before anybody else, and I have to spend about 10 minutes getting the rest of the meat off of there. And it just becomes a project, you know?
Me too, man. That's what I enjoy. People always, oh, I don't like the bone, whatever it is. It's like, oh man, this is you're gonna spend a little bit less. And then, some people say, depending on what it is, man, I'll say, yes, I do think bone gives enhance the flavor. But I mean, I'm not one to I don't know what the bone on the inside of the meat is going to do on the outside of the meat. So that's not even an
Right.
argument I ever like to make because that's one of those rabbit holes you get into. If you ever say that on the internet, man, is bone doesn't give flavor. If it does, oh, you're
Well, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. As far as a steak goes, the majority of what you're eating, it can't affect it. But like, you can't argue with the fact that like a short rib, a bone-in short rib tastes better to me than a boneless short rib. When you cook it, the juice, the stock that it will render,
yeah,
like
I agree. Yeah.
it's just better. And the meat around the bone is like beef ribs are. And by the way, my kids think I'm crazy, but I'll eat the tendons and all of it. I love
Oh,
all of
me
that
too,
stuff.
man. Oh, yeah, all the cartilage and all that.
Yeah,
When
it's
you
my
start
favorite
doing, oh
stuff.
man, so there's Argentina style barbecue. They leave the membrane. So they'll get a skirt steak, and then all of us, we rip the membrane off, and then you clean it all up and get it perfect, and then you grill it medium rare. Well, Argentine style, they'll do it up hours and then slap it with water and do this, and it'll slowly cook. Man, it's like a brisket, but like enhanced because it has so much marbling. And you were never to think over here, like, you don't cook skirt steak like that. You cook it like this, you slice it thin, but you're like, man, there really is so many different ways to cook these things to make them absolutely wonderful. We just get kind of stuck on you can only do this, or people just like, I like filet mignons, or I do
Yeah.
this because that's all they know, and they're kind of afraid to get out of the comfort zone. And then once they find out, you know what, I'm gonna try the chuck eye steak, and then they're like, man, that is good. Why have I not done it? And you're like, there you go.
I actually think I'm glad you brought up the skirt steak. Skirt steak was something I never saw as a kid. And I actually think it's the most like slept on cut of beef there is. It's an incredible piece of meat, and you don't see it in all that many restaurants. And then some people think that that's what carne asada is made of, but that's some high grade fucking carne asada because it's not a cheap cut of meat.
No, there's different ones. So there's an inside skirt and then there's an outside skirt. And then they have something called flat meat. Usually the flat meat is what you're going to use for carne asada. Um, and then the inside skirt is usually that's the one that is going to be a little bit more, it's going to be a little thicker and a little bit chewier. So the outside skirt, that's my favorite. That's the one that always has the big piece of membrane on it. It's a little bit thinner. It kind of just looks like rugged. Uh, oh man, I love that stuff. When I first figured it out, I'm like, how did we not eat this growing up?
Yeah,
How did
I
we?
never saw that growing
I
up.
know I never did either. When I first started an apprenticeship, they're like skirt steak, and I laughed inside. I'm like, oh, skirt. What is this?
Right.
Why? Who named this?
Where does that come from? What part of the cow is it that it got the name skirt steak?
I mean, there. So if you cut this guy open, there's one right here, and then there's another one on the inner side. So it's just kind of a couple little flaps that
Okay.
are on there. So I mean, I don't technically know where the
Where that name came from?
origin, man. There's so many weird names, man. There's all the stuff, man. There's a lot of weird names.
Yeah. I watched your evolution on carnivore. Was that prompted just because it is in the zeitgeist right now? What got you doing that?
So, man, by the end of last year, so just making content, and so as a content creator, I'm making let's make a double cheeseburger with some chili on it. Let's make this with this. And I mean, these are beautiful looking. Everybody wants to see that. That's the glory, right? So I'm making this stuff. And so man, by the end of the year, dude, I don't know how many pounds I put on, but I felt like absolute garbage. Like I just didn't feel good. And I didn't want to do, oh, I'm going to do a New Year's resolution because I just feel, as a guy, dude, I mean, I've always done the same thing, man. I've been on a ton of diets and stuff. So it's like, I'm not doing a New Year's resolution, none of this and this. And so I'm like, I'm going to start doing something else. But a couple weeks later, I talked to somebody that was actually on social media and she reached out and she said, hey, would you get on my podcast? This. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And so it was a carnivore podcast. I didn't even realize it. Like it was a full, and she's like, are you carnivore? I'm like, no. And she's like, oh, we thought you were carnivore, And then she's like, what do you think about vegetarians? Almost waiting for me to say like, oh, vegetarians suck. I'm like, dude, whatever you want. Like, if you want to eat that, cool. Like, if that makes you feel good, that's wonderful. And she's like, wow, this is a little different than I thought. And so, but it turned into a
You're
really
like,
good conversation.
listen, lady, I'm a butcher.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not
so,
mad at the people who like broccoli.
no, but it was nice, man. We had a really good conversation. We're actually really nice. We're good friends now. Uh, he's telling me about the carnivore diet, and so I'm hearing a few things, and I've heard it. I mean, obviously, being on a meat channel, you hear carnivore diet, and so I'm like, what is this thing? And so I paid a little bit more attention. She told me a little bit about it, and then I think that day or the next day, I'm like, you know what, dude, I'm just gonna do this for 30 days. How can this can't hurt me? I already feel like shit. All these people are saying it makes them feel good. It takes rashes away, all this stuff, man, allergies. And I'm like, and so my wife is actually a scientist, uh, and she's like, what are you going to do? Dude, you're going to eat meat for the 30? Like, wait a minute, dude. Like, hang on. And then she kind of looked into it and she's like, all right, well, I mean, it doesn't look that bad. And so she gave me the approval that which a good wife should do because she's like, come on, man, what are you doing? But after doing it, so I'll tell you the first couple days were okay, like not a big deal. But it was like day two driving, and I'm like, oh man, my stomach. And all of a sudden, the Joe Rogan experience, like, oh man, it wasn't like anything that I haven't had in my life. It was just like, oh, bubble gut, like, oh, I better go home, And then that was it. And then the next day, maybe a little bit, but then after that, just kind of a steady, regular stomach. I've been drinking electrolytes. All the stuff that was recommended. Like, a couple different extra vitamins. But yeah, I use some seasoning. People just say use salt. Man, I mean, it's like for me, I don't want to fall into this box either. Like I can't do that because no matter what you do, you're doing something wrong. And so for
Yeah,
me, I'm like, this
somebody
is
will
the
have a
way that I'm
problem with
doing.
it.
And so that's what I think people get discouraged of, because if you fail the carnivore diet or whatever diet it is, you failed. And right, as a guy that's done a lot of different diets, man, like it's over, dude. I may as well go eat a bag of Doritos, right? And so for me, this is more like, no, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to use regular seasoning. It's not going to have sugar. It's fine. I'm going to drink coffee. Some people don't. That's fine. Like, there's a couple things that I wanted in my life, and that I think continued to help make me do it, because it wasn't like, oh, I got to do this. It was like, man, I really want to do this. And so it made it a lot better. And it's been past the 30 days, and I have I have not I've had some lettuce. I've had some lettuce with, like, I'll make, like, a chicken bowl with some lettuce and do kind of the same thing, or add in something here, but I haven't had any carbs or anything else. Maybe a couple blackberries, just to kind of like reintroduce and kind of see if it does anything to me. But no, man, I feel too good to eat that shit right now. And so it's like, even like I bought my kids and my wife a pizza. We had this whole thing at the school. I love pizza, but to me, it wasn't even. I had no problem, like, not at all, because the way I felt. So it's like, it's
Yeah,
so weird how you, like, okay, cool.
I suspect um, that it isn't the lettuce and the blueberries and the blackberries and stuff like that. I mean, listen, and what the fuck do I know? At the end of the day, I'm never all I've ever battled is my weight, and
Uh-huh.
so that's a real kind of a simple formula of like consume less calories per day than I exert. I'm going to lose weight, and try to do it not as insanely fast as possible, because the rebound when you do it insanely fast is rough. And so I don't know, but my buddy who's doing carnivore right now for eczema, he has eczema, and he stops eating vegetables and other processed foods, which he eats very little of anyways, processed foods, and it clears up. And so I don't know, there might be something to that. And
That's kind of me too. I
yeah,
have sometimes I'll get some eczema. I haven't had it for a month. And
right,
again, but I haven't eaten processed foods for a month. And so
right.
it's like, I don't know. I don't know. And so that's why I'm going to slowly, like I said, add lettuce. I don't see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Lettuce is
Right.
cool.
Lettuce is check
Lettuce
lettuce
is
off the board.
cool.
Right. Try an onion and see what that does, or some
Dude,
broccoli and
yeah.
see what that
I can't even
does.
tell you that blackberry, man. Blackberries have never tasted so good
Yeah.
because I haven't had any sort of sugar. And so, oh man, they just popped in my mouth. I ate like three and I was like a giddy little kid.
Yeah. I
Got a little
tried
sugar rush.
for a photo shoot, I did like a proper bodybuilder cut where like 10 days out you increase water to like 3 gallons a day, and then you slowly taper your salt down, and then you're having basically no sodium, and then you stop your water and you just get like shredded for like 10 minutes. You look
Yeah.
insane for like 10 minutes. And man, getting rid of salt, like life became depressing. Like the little bit of
Oh,
of joy I had in the food that I had was gone, and it was just awful. And then by a few days into it, you don't miss it as much. But when I put salt back on my food, man, it was as
oh,
though it was a magical experience. So I can only imagine with something sweet probably has that same thing where it's like almost profound how good it tastes.
it's this. I think it's the same thing with anything. I mean, as humans, I won't even say as Americans, we overconsume everything, right? And so when you can have the Italian sandwich, it doesn't taste as good because you have it all the time, right? But if you have it one time, oh my God, this sandwich I've been waiting for, you enjoy it so much more. And I was not enjoying food at the end of last year, let's just say, because
Yeah.
it's a free for all. I can have whatever I want, like, oh, whatever, dude. It's like I can just eat what I want. And that's not fun anymore because now you just feel like shit. And so now after doing this, it's like a reset. And I'm like, oh, like I got some buffalo chicken chips up here that are made out of chicken skins, dude. And I'm like, oh man, but it's nice because they taste so good because I haven't had stuff like that, which is like, man, it's kind of a mind thing that you got. Like, wait a minute, dude, we can do this. We can make these little changes.
Yeah, man, you just made me think. There's a chef named Alon Hall. He actually won one of the years early on of Top Chef. He's a very good chef. He had a restaurant in California called the Gorbals, and he did a fucking. It was like kosher Scottish food, if that communicates anything to you. It was crazy. But he did a BLT with chicken skin instead of bacon. Fuck,
Oh,
dude, it was so good. Holy shit, was that good? And your chicken skin chips right now. I mean, my mouth salivated when you said that.
dude, I'm telling you, I think, I mean, and this is all the stuff that I'm showing people too. Because again, we go back to that whole chicken, man. Like, you buy the whole chicken, and this is I saw Whole Foods. I went to Whole Foods, same exact brand of chicken, and that's what we were talking about. It was 365 brand, two boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Let's just say it was $11, right? And
Right.
then one whole chicken was 10.50. So it was actually less
And
expensive.
it's got two breasts on it, plus a lot
So
more, plus the
so
oysters and the wings and
and everything else. So you get the back, the legs, the wings, the thighs, and then I took the breasts off and I weighed them. They actually weighed more. So at the end of the day, it was like a no-brainer. And then, but some people get confused because they'll say, "Oh, well, I see chicken breasts for $1.99 a pound." It's not comparable. And so if you're seeing, you have to do a brand comparison, right?
right.
So someone will be like, "Oh, I get chicken breasts all the time." Be like, "Well, do you know what chicken breasts those are?" I mean, to each their own, but
A
it's not the
dollar
same.
99 a pound. I have never seen that. That's a really
Oh,
inexpensive chicken
we
breast.
see that. I see that all the time over here, and so it's like we have a place. There's Safeway around here. I'm sure you know Safeway,
Sure.
but they do the sales, and so what we used to call this stuff because we we used to call this stuff prison chicken. And so the way it's raised, it's obviously not raised very good, and they're all into the same pen and this and this. Well, we found out there was a couple of farms that were actually on prisons.
Oh
And
wow.
so, yeah, and so there was and so some of these places, when I my back in the day, I was like, man, these are literally prison chickens. So they're doing the same thing, but the prison workers were doing this, and so we had this whole thing. And but the way that they're fed and they're raised, it's a lot different than, let's just say, like a Mary's organic chicken, which is they got to go through all the steps, they got to eat the right things. It's a whole different process, and so it's comparing apples to oranges, but it doesn't seem like it because you see two chicken breasts,
Yeah,
and so it's
the
so hard for people.
the one thing that I found about that, because for me, boneless, skinless chicken breast is about getting the maximum amount of protein I can, with as little fat as possible. But to your point, I remember going like, this is untenable for some people. Let me just go and do this with lesser brand chicken breasts. But I would often boil my chicken breast just because I'd make a big pot of boiled chicken breast. It's easy. I'm not looking for a lot of flavor. I'm just looking for protein bombs.
Uh-huh.
Um, the amount of fat in those off-brand chicken breasts was like 5 times the fat, and I would know this simply because the amount of fat that would boil off
Mm-hmm.
while cooking it, which was astonishing with like a high quality boneless skinless chicken breast. I would get like a couple of dots of fat in my boiled chicken water, right? But with these other brands, there was just an astonishing amount of fat cooking off, which was really confusing because I thought it was I think there's a little bit of fat in all of animal based protein, unless it's removed like with a whey protein or something like that. But even that often has a little bit of fat in it. Um, but I remember boiling cheap chicken breasts and being left with a lot of, something that at another point in my life I would be conniving to like fry bread in.
Uh-huh. Exactly. But the thing though about that, which again, people kind of they go, oh, fat, right? And so if you're gonna, do you use olive oil or other oils, right?
I listen, my total cholesterol is fine, but my LDL is slightly higher and my HDL is slightly lower. So I've been instructed by doctors to try to increase my omega 3s and decrease my omega 6s. And so,
Got it.
yes, I try to have a little, chia seeds and avocado and olive oil and less fat from meat and, very little omega 6 oils like seed oils and stuff like that. That's the balancing act I do right now. But I,
Yeah.
but I then will go and eat a steak. Once a week, I'll eat a steak.
Yeah. Well, what I was just gonna say is with that, so like going back to like, all right, so you're to those chicken breasts instead of getting the cheap ones. So you only want the chicken breast, right? Because that you don't want the thighs, you don't want the legs. And I get this a lot because people go, I don't use that. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that, right? So after you pull those breasts off, you got your breast to the side. Pull that skin off, put that skin to the side, and then just take the rest of the chicken, the carcass, put it in a bunch of water. You're still going to get a shit ton of protein. You
Oh,
can
and
still like
collagen. Chicks are so
dude,
into collagen.
so much. And then that's what people, you're just getting this for free. And then that's the thing people go, I don't like dark meat. Don't eat the meat. Just make the broth if you want. But after you cook it, you're going to eat the meat. I guarantee you're going to eat that soup meat.
Oh, listen, I'm a dark meat guy.
Uh huh.
Turkey, chicken, any of it. If I had my choice, dark meat is the way to go. I
Uh
I
huh.
I do consider the oysters to be like the most prized. And then next I'll eat the Pope's nose because
Oh, I
that
was going to
and
see. I'm
that's
like,
not even meat. That's just fat. That's pure fat. And the
all right,
skin like that is what calls to me in the night.
my
Somebody
man.
says like, "Do you want to have dessert?" I'm like, "I'd rather have another cheeseburger. I'd rather have another piece of pizza than
I'm
have a
with
piece
you,
of
bro.
cake."
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm with you.
fat is my love language. Like yeah, watching you fry chicken skin, like that's what gets me going. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And chicken wings, like I was so depressed when I found out how many calories were in a chicken wing because it's mostly skin
In.
and dark meat, you know.
Mm-hmm. No, it's yeah, that's where you gotta pull off these little tricks, man. That's where you
Yeah.
gotta do, that's
Yeah,
where you
and people making stock, like I'm always astonished when my wife buys a jar of collagen powder and I'm like, I can make you the most wonderful gelatinous stock
yes.
that's not full of fat, right? We'll take the fat off of it and it's
Uh-huh.
just collagen and it's not that expensive and we can season it with whatever you want, turmeric or ginger, or garlic,
Yep. And
aromatics.
just
Like
drink
that's
it.
not hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you drink it down, you're getting all your collagen and we're having dinner and it's not an insane price to pay, but you want to spend $50 on a small jar of collagen powder. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, grab some chicken feet, man. Grab some chicken feet and
I've
some
done
chicken
that.
backs.
Listen, I'll go to dim sum and eat chicken feet all day long. It's a lot of knuckles you got to spit out and my kids get real freaked out, but every soup that I've made them that they've loved and they didn't watch me make had chicken feet in them.
See, that's where the flavor is, man.
Yeah,
And if
it's
people, again,
incredible.
we all get scared about it because we don't learn about it. Nobody learns about this stuff. So they're like, ooh, feet. But then you realize, oh, when you go to a Chinese place, you're like, man, why is this so good?
Yeah.
They're
They
using the
they
right
know how to
stuff.
cook it. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let's talk about butchers and meat. You had a deal with a meat company, right?
Yes. Gruntworks Meat Company. Yeah, man. Crazy, crazy little deal. So I'll kind of
Are
run
you
through
cool?
it.
Are you cool talking about it?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm just saying. I'm just like trying to think where to start because it's a kind of a crazy little deal with these guys. So yeah. So I'll kind of give you a background of like. So I started doing social media probably a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. Just cutting meat and long story short, I was sick of Facebook and Instagram. I was honestly just sick of it. I was sick of seeing friends doing this or doing that. I was just like, I'm over social media. I don't want to look at it. And so I took that stuff off my phone. But I was working for a place where I was doing their social media, where I would take pictures of the meat or whatever and post it online. And so that was fine. So I wasn't browsing any of that. And so while I'm doing all that, this guy that I'm working with, he's sending me these TikToks, man. I'm like, I don't have that app. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not getting that. And he's like, and then I finally did. I'm like, dude, what is this stuff? So I downloaded it and I'm like, oh, there's some pretty good videos. They're food video. I'm like, wow, this is kind of like that stuff without, I don't know anybody. And so I'm like, cool, I don't have to hear anybody's problem. I mean, I just didn't want to have to deal with all this stuff all the time. And so I start watching this stuff and then the dude's like, oh man, you should make a video. I'm like, nah. Long story short, I made a couple videos. I'm like, oh, this is how you cut this. This is how you did this. And then I made one and I made like a terrible video. And then I'm like walking to the bathroom and I'm making a voiceover and it's me walking out with a pork loin and I slap it on the table and I'm gonna stop wasting your fucking money. And I just start ranting. I'm like, stop being lazy. You can get this. And I just tell people how to cut up a boneless pork loin. And it got a couple 100,000 views. And I'm like, dude, I'm used to getting 9 likes from the people that I know. And so I'm like, wow, people want to know how to do that. And so then I did something else where I cut up a chuck roast and it's like 500,000 views. And I'm like, what? Like people want to know this stuff? And so I kept kind of going with it. And then questions would come in and I would answer it. And yeah, long story short, man, I got a few million followers now and I don't cut meat anymore. I just do this. So with that being said, I have a few, I've gotten a few sponsors. I've had a few deals through the way. And so there's a company that reached out, Gruntworks Meat Company. And so this guy reaches out, his name was Eric. And first he sends an email and, it's a great email and right up my alley. I'm like, he starts talking about he's working with the NFL doing this and this and with a startup and like, we're changing it to online sales and I get all this information and I start looking some of it up and I'm like, oh, this seems pretty legit, dude. I'm like, this guy, Nate Boyer, he's part of this whole thing. And I'm like, man, like this would be really cool. And then they have Jay Glazer from the NFL. He signed up on this, and they have him, and I'm like, dude, like, no, I love football. Like, this is gonna be dope. Like, let's talk about like what's. And so we start having a conversation. So then he goes to call me, and he goes, "I'm gonna call you at 11 a.m. You know, I'm in New York, and so it's 11 a.m. I get no call, and I'm like, all right, this was some bullshit. A couple hours later, this guy calls. He goes, hey, you know, he starts talking business. I'm like, yo, man, I don't even really want to have this conversation. I'm like, we had a meeting, and like, you did this and this. He's like, oh, you know, it must have been the time difference, and it was like, no, even if it was, it would still be off. Like,
Right. Yeah, you're
you
still
could already
3 hours
tell.
late. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever it is, man, this isn't right. And so he's like, well, can I just talk real quick? And I'm like, yeah, let's have a conversation. So we talk a little bit, and he starts telling me some of the details. He's like, I'll send you some stuff, you know, really good, really good salesman, you know? And so he tells me this whole thing. He connects me, and then we get in a meeting with all these other guys, and their idea is they want to be like a butcher box, right? And so me, I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to do that. That's not me. I want to save people money. What I want to do is be able to get people to get big chunks of meat, get quarter cows, half cows, whatever it is. And so
Cut it up, store it, freeze it. You got meat for months.
exactly. And so this is my dream. And so for me to say, hey, go buy a box of steaks, yes, it might be good for some people, but that's not me. And so for me, I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so they got off the phone. They reached back out. They said they wanted to work with me. They sent out a contract. They said, we want to start doing it that way. That
Wow.
sounds like yeah. And I'm like, dude, are you serious? Yeah. And so I'm like, this is amazing. So we got a contract. We got, um, yeah, a significant amount of money per month. And I'm like, dude, this is the real deal. I'm like, this is great. And so we kind of get through the first month. It was kind of chill. And then I got paid. Like, you know, I think it took a little while. You know, it took like a month and a half, or, you know, I'm like, whatever, you know, these guys are figuring it out. And then then we get to the next month, and we start doing content. Everything's good. These guys start changing everything on the website. I'm going through the website, like they have top sirloins marked as porterhouse. I mean, I'm sifting through this thing. I got one of my buddies involved. We write out something to put on the front of the page. I mean, so this whole thing, they had everything marked grass fed when it wasn't. There was grass fed and grain finished and wag. And so I'm like, in my head, I'm like, dude, obviously, I mean, I have a lot of experience, but how in the hell are these people not seeing all this stuff? Like,
Right.
these guys have millions of dollars into this. So I'm like, all right, well, this kind of feels good to me, because I'm like, dude, I'm the expert right here. And
Right.
so we continue, and any recommendation I make, done. It's like whatever Tony's, you know, asking, we're doing it, because he knows what the hell he's talking about. And I'm like, okay, like, this is cool. And so do we do that? We're generating sales. I get all these people on. I mean, and I go and visit. So I go to Florida, I go visit, and I go see the slaughterhouse. And I get to meet this guy, and then I meet another guy, and it was great, man. Like, I'm like, this is what an opportunity. And then we're like, oh, we're gonna go to dinner. Beautiful. So we're going to dinner. I'm in the car, and then this guy says, so, you know, there's been some stuff going around. I want to be honest with you, so you might not hear something, you know, that's not true. And I'm like, oh, what is it? He goes, so I served 10 years in prison. Um, I got caught up in something for basically embezzling $120 million.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so it was the whole thing. He was saying all sorts of different things about how it happened, and he got caught in it, and that's not him, and whatever it was. And he gave me a whole story, and he shows me all the receipts, and he's doing this, and he wants to change his life for his kids, man. He said he wants to leave a legacy for his kids, and he would understand if I didn't want to work with him anymore. But, you know, he just wanted to be honest, and he wanted to tell me in person. And I'm like, all right, man, like, dude, they give me this whole story. And I'm like, you know what? Like, everyone deserves a fucking second chance, my man. Like, you seem like you know, everything's working. And like, yeah, I'd love to, I want to grow this business. He said, we're going to grow this, and we're going to have it for this amount of time, and we're going to make a legacy. You know, he goes through this whole entire thing. And so, uh, yeah, so then, yeah, I'm a little bit shocked, but I'm like, all right, well, let's just keep going with this. I tell my wife and this, and so he actually tells me, he goes, have you ever seen the movie The Wolf of Wall Street? I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I think you might have. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, basically, he said, I mean, I don't know what to believe anymore. He had been approached by the director or whatever, and he had one of the part of the scenes or whatever it is, it was influenced by what he had done. And
Right.
so he had to sign this, he says, and this and whatever it was. And so he's telling me this whole thing, and I'm like, you know what? Like, again, like you went through your thing, you're cool, you want to be done with it, and so let's do this. And so everyone else was cool. Like again, we had Nate, and we were talking to everyone, and Matt was the CEO or the owner of the company. All these people, man, they were all on, and so all these changes started happening, and we have a meeting, and they go, you know, how are the sales? And they're basically like, well, every time Meat Dad posts, we sell stuff. And so they're like, all right, man, well, we need to post some more. You know, I'm like, well, you know, like we can, but we got to get this thing running the right way. And we got to get this. And some things started falling apart, the packaging, late orders, somebody, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? It's getting a little sideways. And they're like, oh, we'll take care of it. And so then it's time for payday. And they say, you know, like, we'll have it on the 20th. Right. And so it's like, all right, you know, that's fine, whatever. We'll have it on the 1st, you know, all right, whatever, you know, have it on the 5th. So we get to the next month. All right. I'm like, all right, dude, it's like the 15th. You owe me for 2 months. And like, you know, we got it. We're getting more funding right now. And this is it. And he shows me this paperwork. And we go this, we have meetings. And then I'm like, all right, man, like, dude, I'm in. Like, we're doing this from the ground up. I get it. Like, dude, you know, like, I'm cool. Let's just wait another month. No big deal. But at that point, I'm like, fuck this, man. I'm not doing anything for them until I get a payment. Like, because I'm the one that's driving this stuff. And so it gets to January, little to no communication.